Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because we're about to unpack something that literally powers the modern world around us, yet we almost never stop to think about how it actually works on a microscopic level. Think about the last time you grabbed a snack at the grocery store. You probably flipped the bag around to look at the nutritional label, right? You wanted to know the calories, the carbs, the proteins. Well, it turns out engineers and scientists do the exact same thing when they're evaluating solid fuels for industrial power. Before a single piece of coal, wood, or biomass is thrown into a massive power plant furnace, it goes through some seriously rigorous testing to figure out its exact nutritional makeup. And understanding that label, it's absolutely crucial for understanding the entire future of global energy. Okay, let's dive into this and look at our ingredients list. We've got 5 vital signs on the agenda today. First, the problem with moisture. Then, density and the bottom line. Third is proximate analysis, followed by ultimate analysis, and finally, unlocking the heating value. First up on our label is Section 1, the problem with moisture, or what I like to call shedding the water weight. To find out exactly how much water is hiding inside a fuel, analysts take a sample and literally bake it in a special furnace, usually between 70 and 120 degrees Celsius. This drives the water right out of the sample so they can measure what evaporated. In the world of power generation, that water weight isn't just some vague concept. It has to be strictly calculated. And they do this in one of 2 ways, either on a wet basis or a dry basis. The wet basis calculates the mass of the water divided by the total wet mass of the fuel. The dry basis, on the other hand, divides the mass of the water by just the dry mass of the fuel. Depending on the exact engineering application, picking the right calculation is totally essential for setting up the plant's combustion parameters. But why do we care so much? To put it bluntly, power plants absolutely hate wet fuel. First off, high moisture makes the fuel soft. Now, you might think soft sounds easy to deal with, but in a massive power plant, you actually want your fuel to be brittle and dry so it shatters easily. Soft wet fuel is incredibly stubborn and hard to crush, which means the plant has to consume significantly more power just to prep the fuel before it even reaches the fire. Worse than that, all that trapped water causes a considerable drop in the actual heating value. You are literally wasting energy just boiling off water instead of generating power. And to top it all off, all that steam creates an unstable flame in terrible combustion conditions. Wet fuel is quite literally fighting the combustion process the entire time. Moving right along, that brings us to Section 2, density, and the bottom line, the economics of bulk. Density, a fuel's mass per unit volume, typically measured in kilograms per cubic meter, isn't just a fun physics fact. It is the core metric that dictates the entire economic feasibility of a power plant. Let's contrast some fuel types to see how this actually plays out in the real world. Most biomass, things like wood chips or agricultural waste, really suffers from being high bulk with very low density. It takes up a massive amount of space but doesn't weigh much. This makes transporting it incredibly expensive. Imagine trying to fill a semi-truck with loose straw versus filling it with dense coal. Because of this volume issue, you simply cannot afford to truck fluffy biomass all the way across the country. It's just not economical. Because of this, biomass-fueled plants have to be built right next to their fuel sources. Now contrast that with gaseous fuels, which have even lower densities. To make them economical to transport, they have to be highly pressurized. Natural gas requires vast pipeline infrastructures, and hydrogen, which is widely touted as a promising green fuel of the future, well, it has some major downsides here. To liquefy and transport hydrogen effectively, it has to be kept at a staggering pressure of about 100 bar. So density really does dictate the logistics of our entire energy grid. Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. This is proximate analysis, or baking it down. This is our macro-level checkup. We are literally baking the fuel down to dust to see exactly how it behaves under extreme heat. And the lab procedure for this is actually incredibly dramatic. We take our sample and subject it to a brutal gauntlet of extreme temperatures. First, we heat it to 110 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes in an inert nitrogen environment. That releases the water. Next, we crank the heat way up to between 700 and 900 degrees, still in nitrogen, for 40 minutes. This drives off the volatile matter, all the gases and vapors trapped inside. Then, we switch the environment completely. We introduce reactive oxygen at 800 to 900 degrees for 20 minutes to aggressively burn off the fixed carbon. Finally, we blast it at a staggering 1,000 degrees in oxygen until there is absolutely nothing left but ash. By measuring the weight loss at each and every step, we know exactly what makes up our fuel. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the contrast between traditional coal and biomass. The differences are just massive. Look at the fixed carbon. Coal is densely packed with it, ranging anywhere from 50 to 80%. Biomass, on the other hand, only has 15 to 28% fixed carbon. But then consider the volatile matter. Biomass is incredibly volatile, made up of 60 to 87% gases that will rapidly burn off. Compare that to coal's 20 to 40%. Because of these tests, we know biomass is mostly volatile matter. It flashes into a gas super quickly, but has incredibly low fixed carbon. Coal, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. It has low volatile matter, but super high fixed carbon. And that right there is exactly why a dense lump of coal smolders and burns incredibly hot for hours, compared to a pile of dry leaves that just flashes and burns out in seconds. This tells an engineer immediately that burning wood or agricultural waste isn't just a simple swap. It requires a completely different furnace design and airflow strategy than burning coal. Let's zoom in even closer now. Welcome to Section 4, Ultimate Analysis, the Elemental Building Blocks. If proximate analysis was our macro checkup, ultimate analysis strips the fuel down to its exact elemental micro-ingredients. And when we evaluate these micro-ingredients, the stark realities of our fuel choices become crystal clear. Take carbon, for instance. This right here is why coal has dominated the industrial age. It packs a massive 80% carbon content. Wood drops way down to 41% carbon, making up the difference with a much higher oxygen content at around 38.2%. But what's truly fascinating is looking at alternative biomass fuels, like chicken waste. It has about 36.7% carbon and a significant 12.9% ash content, which is much higher than coal or wood. These specific elements dictate not only how hot the fuel will burn, but exactly what kind of emissions and leftover waste a power plant is going to have to scrub out and manage later. And all of this leads us to our final destination today, Section 5, Unlocking the Heating Value, the absolute payoff metric. You can think of the calorific or heating value as the ultimate payoff. It is the exact amount of thermal power gained by burning the fuel completely in a perfectly insulated adiabatic process. To measure this, scientists use some incredibly precise tools, and the tool they use depends entirely on the state of the fuel. For testing a solid or liquid, engineers use a closed system called a bomb calorimeter. It's exactly what it sounds like, a sealed, heavy-duty container where the fuel is ignited under high pressure. But for testing gaseous fuels, an open system known as a Boy's calorimeter is used instead. Cleanly separating these methods ensures that our energy measurements are perfectly calibrated to the fuel's physical state. But there's a catch here, and it circles right back to the water we talked about at the very beginning. The difference between a higher heating value, or HHV, and a lower heating value, LHV, all comes down to what happens to the water produced during combustion. If the resulting water is condensed back into a liquid, it releases extra latent heat, giving us that higher heating value. But in most real-world power plants, that water escapes right out of the smokestack as a hot vapor, and it takes all that latent heat with it. That leaves us with the lower heating value, which is usually the more practical, slightly lower number that engineers actually use on a daily basis. So, the crucial point is, when we look at the lower heating values across the board, the absolute dominance of fossil fuels becomes painfully clear. Natural gas sits at the absolute top of the energy hierarchy, delivering a massive 52 megajoules of energy per kilogram. Crude oil and diesel follow closely at 42 and 40 megajoules respectively, and coal delivers a very solid 35 megajoules per kilogram. These fuels are incredibly dense with energy, and that is exactly why our entire modern world was built upon them. But what happens when we compare those giants to the biomass alternatives? Well, we see a much lower thermal punch across the board. Agricultural shell gives us 17 megajoules per kilogram. Wood provides 16. Chicken waste offers 14. And bagasik, which is the fibrous remains after crushing sugarcane, sits way down at 8 megajoules per kilogram. That means you would literally have to burn more than 4 times the amount of bagasik to equal the energy output of just 1 single kilogram of coal. And that brings us to the ultimate crossroads of our explainer today. We've seen how moisture drains efficiency, how density dictates complex logistics, and how the chemical makeup drastically alters the thermal payoff. So, the question we are left with is this. As we transition away from fossil fuels, which alternative fuel's nutritional label will strike the perfect balance? How do we engineer a future grid that maintains the massive thermal power we demand while utilizing fuels with lower environmental impact despite their lower heating values and higher bulk? It's a massive planetary engineering puzzle, and the answer is hidden right there in the basic ingredients of the fuel. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating topic today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.